I'm a physical therapist who has specialized in treating wrist and hand injuries for the past decade. From professional gamers to app developers to analysts to musicians, crafters, I've been featured on ESPN, on the Washington Post. I've published my own research, and I've helped over 2,500 plus individuals resolve their wrist pain without resting, medication, surgery, and most importantly, without using a brace. So bracing and resting your wrist, like many doctors recommend, will not help you get long-term relief for your wrist pain. Why? Because it does nothing to address the actual cause of your wrist pain. I want you guys to think of it like this. Let's say you have a broken pipe in your house, like this. And in this pipe, there's water, right? And there's a crack, and there's a water leak. You put some tape over it, you put a towel or a repair sleeve or a brace, and that's gonna help stop that leak temporarily. But it does nothing to address the underlying problem of the pipe being weaker. Or over many years, it's been weathered without proper maintenance or care. This is exactly what a wrist brace will do for your pain. It will provide you temporary relief, but will do nothing to address the underlying problem. And the underlying problem being poor endurance of the muscles and tendons you're using frequently. And most wrist pain from repetitive strain, like office work and gaming or anything where you're using your hands, affects the tendons of the wrist and forearm. As you can see here, there are a lot of tendons and muscles surrounding the hand on both sides, right over here on the back, as well as the palm side on the forearm. And depending on where you actually feel your pain, most often it can tell us what tissue is involved. Typically when it's a little bit more focal or you feel it at the wrist itself, it actually involves the tendons that are responsible for bending your wrist forward into wrist flexion. And then on the opposite side, it's involving the extensors. And when you are feeling it around the thumb, it's the thumb muscles. When you're feeling it on the thumb side of the forearm, it involves the muscles that move your thumb around as well as bend your wrist up towards the thumb. And then vice versa, right? Like on the pinky, you will be utilizing your ulnar deviators. And so these are the muscles and tendons that are involved, and you have to actually target these, build up the endurance of these muscles to ensure that you don't have problems in the long run. So back to my drawing board, you can think of your muscles and tendons as having only so much they can handle. I'm just gonna draw a little cup here, right? This is a cup, okay? And there's water. Right, there's water that pours into the cup, and in water represents physical stress. So you can think of it like typing or playing guitar or gaming. The different activities that you do affect how much water is being poured in here, right? And over many years, maybe where we have less physical activity, where we have more of a sedentary lifestyle, and we haven't focused specifically on building up our endurance, this cup can actually get smaller, right? And when the water actually fills all the way up to the top and overflows, that's when our tissues become irritated, right? Irritated. And that's when you feel your experience of pain. And so, again, over the many years, you have less capacity because you're not doing anything to address that underlying problem of poor endurance, right? Which is represented by this cup. And so you can handle less stress. And this is actually exactly what the brace does. You put on a brace for your wrist, right? For your hand here, right? Hand here, you put on a brace. You put on a brace like this. And yes, it will immobilize the wrist. It will prevent stress from being applied to the tendons. But we know now in the research that what happens is when we rest, when we avoid activity, our muscles and tendons can get weaker, right? Our tendon loses structure. Our muscle tendon complex gets weaker. Our signaling from brain to muscle reduces, and our kinetic chain, shoulder all the way down to the hand, deteriorates, right? So all those things happen as a result of rest and bracing, right? Because again, it doesn't change the fact that your cup is a lot smaller. You can't handle as much stress, right? And again, this happens over years of physical inactivity. And so what we can actually do is increase the size of the cup, right? This cup here, you can increase the size of it so that it can handle a lot of water or a lot of stress without overflowing, right? And when you rest, when you massage, when you ice, when you heat, it suctions out or pours out some of the water, right? So you can end up handling more. And if you're a gamer, I've talked about this quite a few times, in that you can think of it like a health bar. And I'll link some resources, if you're a gamer, to some of the other videos that will maybe help you understand this a bit more. But as you can see, the brace will do nothing to address the main problem, which is why it doesn't help us resolve our wrist pain in the long term. So I want to describe, to actually get a long-term relief for your wrist pain, right? Here's what you want to do. You want to build up the endurance of the muscles you are using, right? And you want to be able to identify based on where you're feeling it. If you are feeling on the palm side of your wrist here, you want to work on your flexors, right? If you feel it on the back side of your hand, you want to work on your finger and wrist extensors, thumb side, radial deviators, and thumb abductors and extensors, right? There's, based on where you're feeling it, right? Based on where you are feeling it, you want to target those muscles and build up endurance. And so at the same time, while we're controlling for how much, the size of the cup, we also want to pay attention to how much water that's going in the cup, how much physical stress. So instead of resting completely, again, which is what a lot of the resources out there on the media, through traditional healthcare recommendations, they recommend completely resting, taking a complete break. That actually will make the cup size smaller, as I mentioned. And so instead of resting completely, we want to modify what we're doing. So instead of gaming for 6 hours, or instead of playing guitar for 4 hours, you only play for 1 to 2 hours and reduce the intensity of that activity. So, or you can incorporate or integrate some breaks within your session of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it be, typing, whether you are typing or playing music or gaming. You can incorporate breaks, to reduce the amount of stress or water that goes in. And remember, when we take breaks, some of that water can be siphoned out, right? That's sort of, again, for the gamer, you can think of it as restoring your HP. But for the cup, the water gets taken out when you rest, when you take a break. And so it gives you a chance to have a bit more capacity. And so you can take breaks. You can just reduce the amount of actual time we're using our hands, reduce the intensity of it too. And so we just don't want to expose our tendons to too much stress. And it takes roughly 4 to 6 weeks for the tissues to adapt, right? And over time, we can gradually increase what we're doing, right? Over time, we can gradually increase our activity, whether it be gaming, desk work, etc., so while we're increasing our endurance, so that we can safely add water into the cup without irritating it. And also knowing that even if you overflow the cup a bit, you in no way have damaged your tendon tissue so bad that it's irreversible. Even if you happen to put too much stress onto your actual tendons, it's only going to be irritated. So all you have to do is deload or rest a little bit for the next day, modify your activity, not take a complete break, but still focus on doing the exercises, because your cup size will gradually get bigger and bigger, so you can tolerate more overall stress. And so I'm not saying that the brace is completely useless. There are actually specific situations that we want to use it. And that situation is at night, to avoid awkward positions of the wrist and hand. Right? So we want to sometimes avoid falling asleep with our wrists in sort of excessive flexion here, and that can put a lot of pressure on joints and even local nerves. That's why sometimes when we wake up, we may have some numbness. But that's it. That's the only situation in which I'm okay with you guys utilizing a brace. The others are, there's obviously some nuance in that for some individuals, it may just feel better and it might provide a placebo effect in helping you reduce some of the sensitivity. That's totally fine. As long as you're just not using the brace and rest together, you're bracing and exercising, then I'm happy. Then you're actually addressing the underlying problem. So you can reduce the pain a little bit with, the contact of the brace over your wrist, and you can strengthen. And over time, you will be able to do more and more and more. And this is, again, what we've seen over the years, 2,500 individuals. Our results sort of speak for themselves. You can check out our resources, you can check out our testimonials, but by actually targeting the underlying capacity problem, you can get your function back. You can finally start using your hands again. And so, we have multiple videos that you guys can check out to learn what exercise you need to do from our routine videos, or you can check out our troubleshooter. And that essentially does help you identify, based on where you're feeling it, you can do a couple tests to identify, what your current level of condition is, so that you want to do the right amount of sets and reps so you don't overload your tissues. So you can check that out in the description, but hopefully this helped. And actually, let me know what you guys think about this format of the video. I wanted to do something a bit more raw. So let me know, and let me know what other questions you want me to answer.